Greed. Hello, Greed. How's it going? Hope you're doing well.
Everything fine.
Why do you have a?
That's because I have the OBS cam.
Oh
Yeah,
no,
I don't
that
have
sounded like you had an AI voice. That's how it sounded. So, but it's good to see you. Are you a glober?
let's say that I don't agree with flat Earth, but I'm not necessarily a glober. I'm a skeptic of both sides.
Okay. Well, it's good to have you in. Really appreciate you
Perfect.
coming in.
Yeah, we can debate whatever you want. We can start with thermodynamics, maybe gravity, whatever.
It's up to you. You're the guest. So, but like I said, it's I appreciate you coming in, and we can try to keep this as respectful as possible and respect each other. Agreed?
Yeah.
Cool.
So
Yeah, I got more coffee. I'll be back.
we can start with I think I saw a video of you talking about the second law, right?
Oh, sorry. With this,
I think I saw a video of you like 2 days ago in which you talked about the second law of thermodynamics
second law of thermodynamics.
and
Yes,
it being
entropy.
violated by a non-closed system with gas.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Okay,
Space.
so can you please summarize the argument to me, because I remember some of your points, but I couldn't make anything clear about it.
Okay, so yeah, what I would say is, if you base on the law of entropy, which is the second law of thermodynamics, if Earth is classified as an open system adjacent to a separate low pressure system like the vacuums of space, entropy will increase, and the gas you breathe will spontaneously increase into the surrounding system, and therefore we wouldn't be able to breathe. So yes, it violates natural law. What's up, PJ?
Okay, and you say it because to maximize entropy, the gas would have to expand to that free space, correct?
Yes, because it seeks entropy.
Well, you're assuming an ideal gas, I suppose.
No.
Because if you don't assume an ideal gas, you have to account for other forces.
Yes, we do have other forces because we live in a dynamic system. I think you agree that we have temperature changes, we do have some volume changes, and we do, just practically have pressure changes because of these behaviors of gas.
Yeah, but there are multiple forces that can stop a gas from moving from a low pressure system to a higher pressure system. For example, intermolecular forces, if you have intermolecular forces that are bigger than the pressure gradient that you have between two containers, for example, that are separated by a membrane that is permeable to one component, for example, you can have two different pressures in those different containers, and they don't equalize because of those intermolecular forces. There are many examples that I can give you in which you have, for example, two containers, one next to the other, and they're separated by something. And when they reach equilibrium, there isn't the same pressure in the two containers.
Okay,
I have a case right here that I can give you as an example, an exercise of thermodynamics that I did from a thermodynamics book.
that'll be great. Yeah, if you can present that, that'll be great. But I want to ask, what's that membrane that separates the two systems?
Let's say that we have two systems and we have a membrane, and we have in both systems two different components. Let's say N1 and N2, and there are different amount of moles in each container. Okay, and let's say that originally we have a piston or something that was blocking the components from one system from going to the other system, and I removed that restriction, and then the two systems start equalizing. Well, when they reach equilibrium, we can see that the pressures at both containers are different. So you can reach equilibrium with two different pressures. And all of this is using ideal gases. So even if with ideal gases, you can do this.
You're talking about, what's that? I'm trying to think what the name is, where the demon principle, where he separates and sorts out the gases.
No, not really. If I can, let me see, because I remember I had the exercise right here. I'm going to tell you basically what the exercise was about, but Let me check.
Oh, awesome.
So,
are you
I can give
studying?
you the exercise from the book if you want.
Awesome.
Also.
Yeah, we can do that. Are you studying thermodynamics at the moment?
Yeah, I'm reading some books. It's a very interesting topic. So
Awesome. So you do understand the difference in thermodynamic systems.
yeah, obviously, that's like the
Cool.
first thing that you see in every book.
Mm-hmm. So when you say Earth is an open system, you would understand what that would entail. It's it has no boundaries though, correct?
Yeah, but I know what you're going with this. That the gas should expand. That depends on the second law that says that entropy is always maximized, and the form in which it is usually enunciated is that the differential of S is equal to 0 at equilibrium. Like you have a maximum of a certain function, the function S, for example, that is the condition for a maximum means that the first derivative of the function is equal to 0, for example, right? And that happens with the function of entropy. Systems always tend to go to the state that in relation to all other states has the maximum entropy. That's the second principle, if I'm not mistaken. And the maximization of entropy depends on what state in particular maximizes entropy. And when you have an open system, for example, and you have a gas that is not ideal, and there are intermolecular attraction, electromagnetic forces, and let's say we are in a hypothetical case in which we haven't proved gravity yet, but let's say there is gravity, then the state of maximum equilibrium will be in accordance to the Boltzmann distribution, which means that you won't have an equalized pressure everywhere. Like I can explain it further,
I
but
agree. The
it's very hard
Boltzmann's
to explain.
yes, I agree. The Boltzmann's constant shows that we don't have gravity.
No, the distribution, not the constant. The Boltzmann constant is a different thing. The Boltzmann
Because
distribution is the distribution of energies
with
in a system.
thermodynamics, yes. But that's what I'm saying. That's why we have the pressure gradients, because that's why when you work with the atmosphere, you have to use PV-nRT. You have to use the ideal gas law.
Not
correct?
really. We usually don't use gas laws because the gas laws are very restrictive, okay? When you consider an ideal gas, you're ignoring any and every form of intermolecular attractions. You're considering that each molecule of gas has no volume, that there are no the molecules that have multiple atoms, that they don't have a spin, for example, that is a particular characteristic of some atoms and molecules. It's a very restrictive model. We usually use the van der Waals model for gases, which adds the intermolecular attractions, but even then, that model is very restrictive.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm saying, just so that we don't derail the topic at hand, that if you consider a real gas, and let's say gravity exists, we can prove it that, but that would be a different debate. You would have a state of equilibrium that doesn't equal the state in which all the pressures are equalized. And that's why I wrote the other example.
Yeah, with Dalton's law. But I just want to correct you quickly. The atmosphere, you do use the atmosphere derived off of ideal gas law. Would you think Penn State University is a good citation?
I think that it's very simplified, because for barometric pressure, for example, you can use gas laws like ideal gases, but we all know that the atmosphere doesn't behave like an ideal gas. If it did behave like an ideal gas, you wouldn't have any distribution of anything, because ideal gases have the same velocity everywhere of each particle. Like for ideal gases, you consider that the median velocity of the particles is the same as the velocity of each particle, which doesn't happen with gases. Every particle has a different velocity. It's a chaotic system.
Yes, and this is why I say when you guys use for the atmosphere, use the ideal gas law, is because you're using it based on Dalton's law. So for every type of gas, you will separate PV and RT. So that's why you have the differences. You understand?
Not really. I wouldn't use that the ideal gas law for trying to get the atmosphere the distribution, because you have a dead end with ideal gases. For ideal gases, you have to consider that there are no forces interacting with the gases of either the containment or of
That's
nearby
not true.
masses.
That's not true, because
Yeah, because
the ideal gas law is based on temperature, pressure, and volume barometrics between each other. So it does
no,
give the dynamics between the gases.
those are intensive
But the
parameters.
only thing is, that's what I was saying. The ideal gas law is specifically based on the ideal situation for a certain gas. Now, if you take
Yeah.
every gas separately based on Dalton's law, you are able to use the ideal gas law separately on each gas in
How
its
would you use that?
conglomerate
Sorry.
to get your atmospheric pressure.
How would you use the Dalton law by separating gases? I didn't quite get that.
Because remember, it's also based on the densities. Because, for instance, carbon dioxide has a different density than oxygen.
Yeah,
Correct. So
that's
your derivative will be different because your pressures will be different
the derivative of what?
of using the ideal gas law. So because
But what
because you're going to use a different volume, you're going to use a different volume or a different Boltzmann constant, because remember each gas has a different constant.
Yeah, the
Because you have a different
Boltzmann
amount of
constant.
moles. You have a different amount of moles in the
Yeah,
atmosphere for each
The
gas. It
Boltzmann constant.
changes, so
Yeah,
it will change the amount, and thus you'll have a pressure gradient based on the amount of gas.
yeah, you will have a different density, but that doesn't mean that with ideal gases you can have a pressure gradient. You will have a different density. You're right, but for ideal gases, we usually don't consider those distributions because they are not factored in the formula. For the formula, you have to consider that there's no interaction between the gases and the walls of the containers in the most basic example, that there's no interaction between the particles of the gases, that there's no interaction with any external, because there's a very important thing in thermodynamics, that when we define internal energy in a simple system, we have to ignore all the electromagnetic forces and any other forces that are around, because otherwise the internal energy wouldn't be equal to the energy of the system, because you have to consider potential energy, for example, and that those things are not considered inside of ideal gases. So that means that we cannot really use ideal gases for these cases.
So which gas laws would you use for the atmosphere then?
That would be incredibly hard because it's very hard to model the atmosphere. But I would use the Boltzmann distribution. I think the Boltzmann distribution tells you that how the energies will be distributed in a system when you get rid of any containers or let the time be an infinite amount of time pass. That's the thing that you would usually use, the Boltzmann distribution for energies inside of a system.
Yeah,
Like
because we understand.
the usual example that you use or that people use to illustrate the Boltzmann distribution is with electrons in a certain atom, for example. You know that every single electron in a different orbit has a different energy, right? Well, Boltzmann's distribution predicts how the electrons or how many electrons will be in each different orbit. We can use that same law for the atmosphere, which predicts how many particles will be at a height h, considering the potential energy of each particle that is directly determined by gravity. That's how it works usually. You don't use the ideal gases because they don't have potential energy.
Yeah, but your atmosphere is based on Bernoulli's principle
What
and
do you mean?
Boyle's law. So when
What
we
do you mean
use
that
it,
it's based on it? Because
because
Bernoulli's principle is very
it's the
specific.
kinetic theory of gases, and the kinetic theory of gases have interactions between the temperature and the velocity because of the volume. So
Now, the kinetic theory of gases says that the temperature of a gas is directly equal to the kinetic energy of it, and for that you have to use an ideal gas also. And so it really isn't completely valid when you consider a particle that has a certain volume, for example. Like you have to make a different case of kinetic energy for particles that are non-ideal. But you're right, temperature is equal to kinetic energy. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
because the more temperature it gets, the more energy it gets, the more you can, in a simple fact, say the molecules are jiggling around, as Richard
Yeah,
Feynman would
yeah.
say, and then the velocity is faster, so it has more energy to be able to move.
Yeah,
So
you
the
use Boltzmann constant for that, yeah.
distribution is different than when it's colder.
The distribution, not the kinetic energy of the gas.
Yeah, but
Like
the
the
distribution
distribution
of that
wouldn't change
energy. But I
because
mean, you would the
for an ideal
distribution of
gas,
that energy would be different.
you can talk. For an ideal gas, we don't consider a pressure gradient. Like if you change the temperature, let's say that I have a gas inside of a certain container, like a small cube. I don't have a piston nor any barrier nor anything, and it's an adiabatic system, for example. And let's say that I increase the temperature in some way. I don't know. It's an adiabatic system, so I can, I don't know, put a thermal bath between the barrier and the gas that it's inside, and it starts heating the gas. Then you wouldn't have any pressure gradient if that's an ideal gas. You would only have a more chaotic movement, and
Yeah,
that
you would
would
agree.
translate to a bit bigger temperature, obviously, but you wouldn't have a gradient.
You would agree that with a greater volume, you have more chance for pressure gradient to happen.
Not really. With an
Because
ideal
it's
gas, you
inversely
would have
proportional. Because it's inversely proportional. If you're increasing the volume, you're decreasing the kinetic energy of the gas, which causes the density to increase. So the velocity slows down, and therefore you are changing the dynamics of the gas.
Are
So
you
you can
sure
have
that
pressure gradient.
the kinetic energy slows or gets
Yes, yes, it
lower when
slows.
you increase the volume? Because
Yes,
nothing is
it's
changing the
inversely
velocity of the
proportional.
particle.
It's inversely proportional to one another.
Well, let's think about a system, and we have a lot of particles moving around. And let's say that I expand the system, like we have a bigger volume now. Did the gas particles start moving slower?
Sorry, say again.
Let's say I have a system, right? And I have a piston, and I expand the system. And I don't change the number of moles that are inside of the system. And well, obviously the particles start expanding everywhere. Do the particles lose velocity, which is the kinetic energy, in that process of expansion?
Are you expanding the container volume, or are you just
No, no,
leaving the
no.
gases?
I'm explaining something very simple, that expanding a gas and losing temperature doesn't necessarily imply that you lose kinetic energy, because the kinetic energy of each particle, we agree that is the same. The velocity of each particle hasn't
No,
decreased when
I'm.
you expand
What I was talking about the volume change of the container.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's what. Yeah. When you're taking a set container and you're saying you're not changing the volume, and the gases are just moving, obviously the energy is going to be distributed by hitting the container wall into the surrounding system.
So you mean that you will have a set of particles that have a different temperature from the other set of particles? You mean that?
It
Like
transfers.
let's say
Heat
that,
energy at work. And remember, as soon as the gas particles are moving around, it's work done. So as soon as work is done, it's used that energy up. You would agree?
well, work is done when the system expands. So if we have a fixed volume, we don't have work. But if you do have
No,
a piston
you
and you increase the temperature and the piston is free, for example, the piston will expand when you increase the temperature. That's obvious. That's a
okay?
very obvious.
Let's take it in another way. Let's take, for instance, this mug, and
Yeah.
we put a lid on. We throw a bit of hot water in here, and we close it. You would agree
Yeah.
that this mug is going to heat up,
Yeah, because it's not an adiabatic system.
and the air, yes, and the air around the mug is now going to get excited from that thermodynamic system, and
Yeah.
this mug will eventually become room temperature.
Yeah, but for that we have to use Fourier's law. That
Spherical.
doesn't apply to ideal gases, because the temperature moves, you would say, at an infinite velocity when we consider ideal gases. Like,
So you
we
would
have
agree
a
with
change of temperature and everything equalizes. That's
so
what
you would
happens with
agree
ideal
with me
gases.
then, according to the kinetic theory of gases, gases have no they are totally they can only change direction with collision. They don't lose or transfer any energy. You would agree with that? They have
They
perfect
do
elastic
transfer.
collision.
They do transfer some energy. Elastic collisions only happen with ideal gases, but they do lose energy with time, as all systems tend to equalize. Like, do you know about the theory of the heat death of the universe? That
Yes.
applies for both flat Earth and globe Earth.
Yeah, the heat death. Yes.
When every system in the world equalizes, each particle would be at the same distance
But
from
that
each
is a
other.
hypothetical, though.
Well, it's a deduction from thermodynamics. All systems tend to equilibrium, and
Yeah,
equilibrium is
but
reached when that happens.
the reason it's hypothetical, though, is because it's taking the universe as a hypothetical isolated system. And because of thermodynamics, entropy always increases to the isolated system. It's not able to decrease. So yes, obviously it seeks equilibrium, and
Wait,
eventually heat death has to happen.
you mean that the total entropy of our world, if we consider it to be isolated, will be the same as the universal entropy? That's what you mean? Like the entropy of our world in which we exist?
No, the universe is isolated, not the Earth.
Okay, but you don't really need that for the heat death to happen. But that's a completely separate topic. Let's go to the main one. You were talking about the gases having a gradient due to the fact that they are close to a heat source, for example, and the particles that are in proximity of that heat source heat up and have a different temperature from, let's say, the particles that are at the different at the roof, for example. Let's say that I heat up my floor, and the particles at my floor will be at a greater temperature than those of the roof. Well, that's true. Yeah, that's true. That you would have a pressure gradient, but that pressure gradient would instantly equalize. And with ideal gases, you wouldn't. The velocity at which that pressure gradient would equalize would be infinite. And with non-ideal gases, the pressure gradient the velocity at which it would equalize, I think would be the speed of sound, because it would propagate as a wave.
Spontaneously.
Yeah, but the equilibrium at the moment where you reach equilibrium, which is something that would happen, that pressure gradient would get completely ruined.
But that's
would
the
have
problem.
an equal distribution.
There is no such thing as equilibrium. Nothing really reaches equilibrium. You can get a relative equilibrium. For instance, when you have a gas canister that is filled with some butane, it's in its relative equilibrium state as it is, but it doesn't put it.
Well, you have to define equilibrium for that. When you define equilibrium, you consider all the different states with the same restricting conditions. And let's say that I have a gas can, for example, and that gas can is obviously contained. When I start, I don't know, releasing that gas, the entropy will increase, and the equilibrium will be different from the equilibrium of the gas inside of the can.
Yeah,
that's obvious.
Pressures changes.
And and in those cases, you have two different equilibriums: the equilibrium of the gas inside of the gas can, and when I release it, that it will be
that's what I was talking about, relative equilibrium, because you don't actually get absolute equilibrium in nature. Entropy is always going to seek absolute equilibrium, but it's never going to get there.
Yeah, but in those cases, in the case that you put as an example, in reference to the restrictions that we were talking about, like the gas inside of the can, in reference to all the separate states in which the gas can be, like it can be in very different states. For example, all the gas particles all in the bottom of the gas can, or all at the top. The condition that maximizes entropy is the gas being evenly distributed in that gas can. The same would happen if you would release it. Like you would have the same pressure everywhere. So if that were true, neither flat Earth nor globe Earth would have a pressure gradient. So for that, you need to add a separate force that gives potential energy or something. It can be an electromagnetic force, or it can be a gravitational force that makes the gradient, which wouldn't happen otherwise, because due to that...
I wouldn't agree with that, though.
Well,
because
that's a consequence of
the thermodynamics doesn't account for gravity, because gravity is not a force in the first instance. So when you are looking at, have you heard of the free expansion of Joule's free expansion of gas?
Yeah, obviously that's a
So
very
that's
basic case. You move a set of gas to a different container, keeping the
so
pressure
that's
equal. Yeah.
practically what always happens based on the second law. If you're going to consider Earth to be an open system and it's inside the ultra vacuum of space, because it's a separate system and there's no barrier, there is no energy exchange. It's just
Yeah.
simply free energy exchange of the gas spontaneously evacuating into the surrounding system. Sorry, and that's why we would also be 10
Yeah,
to the 10 to the minus 17 tall, just like space.
you don't need a barrier like that to stop gas from going somewhere. For example, do you know Bernoulli's
Yes.
law about the? Let's say that I have the usual example is with a piece of paper, right? Like you start blowing that piece
Mhm.
of paper, and the gas behaves in a way that you wouldn't expect. Well, you're directing the gas to a certain place and avoiding it from going to another place, and you're doing that by increasing the velocity of the gas. And in that case, you
You're
could say
creating a
that
lower
you're
pressure.
exerting a certain force. Yeah, you're exerting a certain force to the gas. Well, with forces in general, with electromagnetic forces, intermolecular forces, don't consider gravity because we can talk about
Well,
that later. With every force, you can stop the gas from going to a certain place if the force is facing at a different direction of the motion of the gas. The usual example would be, for example, a car with friction. Like I don't need a container to stop the car from going forward. Friction can do that. Friction is a force. I need a force to apply to the gas particles to stop them from going to a certain place. In the case of the Earth, you would have gravity. In the case of flat Earth, I don't know what force you would
but
usually
that's
use
the
for the gradient to
but
generate the
that's the
stability.
problem I'm trying to explain to you with Bernoulli's principle. All that happens is there's no really force. So the gas itself is forcing based on its velocity through the lower pressure system. So it takes the longest distance, which means, like an airplane wing that works on Bernoulli's principle. So what happens is it creates a
Yeah,
low
but
pressure system on top of the wing and the high pressure system under the wing. So that forces the gas to move faster through the low pressure, which forces the wing, the airplane upwards. That's Bernoulli's principle. But there's no.
but do you realize that that's a force, right? Like that's a form of force. There are different forces, not only the actual forces of I don't know, electromagnetism, gravity, and all of that. Like when you have a different gradient of like you know about there's a third intensive property of systems. Like you have temperature, you have pressure, and you also have the how was it called? It's usually denoted with the parameter mu, which is a Greek letter, but it's related to the moles.
Yeah,
And
it's K.
when you have when you have a different density of moles, that can generate a force, and that force can make precisely the example that I put at the start of the debate, two different moles and a membrane that is only permeable to one of those type of moles, and that generates a gradient of pressures between the two systems that wouldn't arise otherwise. I don't know if you get what I mean. Like that system, that gradient can be generated by a force. That's what I mean. And that force, in the case of Earth, would be gravity.
What would you say the force is when it comes to the Bernoulli's principle? What
Well,
force is acting upon the gas?
for that gas, you would usually have the contact force. Like if you have a plane and the plane is moving, it's obviously interacting with the gas around, and that's generating a chaotic system, for example. And when you use aerodynamics, you try to minimize that chaotic system to get advantage of that Bernoulli's law. But everything happens, the Bernoulli's law happen because of the interaction between the plane and the gas particles. And that's a force,
Yes.
a contact force in this
So
case.
I agree. It's the contact force because it's based on the transforming and the transfer of the gas from the plane itself flying. That's why the plane still has to use gas to be able to move. It still has to use fuel. So it's
Yeah.
just transforming and transferring that energy into the surrounding gas, which gives the force for the Bernoulli's principle to happen. I agree.
But do you agree that that force is stopping the gas particles from going to a certain place and instead is redirecting them so that the aerodynamics of the plane can be maximized? You agree with that?
Yeah.
That the force is making the gas go somewhere and not other place?
It's directing them, but it's not stopping. It's not stopping the actual movement of the gases, because you would agree that gas
Yeah,
can
of course,
only
that's
change
right.
direction with obviously a force directed at it, or with a collision.
With a collision, with a force, with you can change the direction of a gas particle with many different things. In this case, we're changing the direction of the particle of the movement with an interaction with the plane. But usually, in the case of the globe Earth, you would use the gravitational force that makes the particles do a different trajectory, because the higher they go, the more time they expend being affected by gravity, and then their velocity goes to
But that's the
zero when
problem.
they reach a certain point, and they fall, and that's usually what happens. And with
That's the
different
problem.
velocity of gas, gases reach different heights.
No, but that's the problem. Gravity is not a force. So you can't evoke gravity for gases to be able to use the force to be pulled down.
Well, you
That's
don't need
negating. That's also negating the fact that the kinetic energy of a gas, if you just want gravity to be there, won't stop it from moving down, because it's never ever demonstrated that gas can stop moving on its own and just
you
move in the
cannot
opposite direction.
you cannot see individual gas particles, but that's what they should be doing if you have a force acting on them. Like, I don't see the particular gas particles when I'm moving on a plane, but I know that there's a difference in pressures because the gas is going somewhere and it's not going to a certain other place. In the case of the pressure gradient, you don't see the individual particles falling. That would be practically impossible. You would need, I don't know, an infinite resolution of I don't know, as an electric, how is it called? Like a microscope, an electric microscope of an infinite resolution to see each of the gas particles going down. But you do know that the gas particles that are moving in every direction, for some reason, are not going up. They are
No,
not
they're
going
always
to
going up.
be.
That I disagree with you. They're all going up.
Yeah, but a certain set of gas particles remains here down and is not going up,
Well,
because otherwise we would have the same pressure everywhere.
no,
We have to
that's
explain
not
why
true.
that happens.
Remember, we live in a dynamic system. So you're missing the point that if we didn't have the containment in the first place, we wouldn't have those gases to have this gas behavior for pressure gradients. Because we live in a dynamic system where you would understand that lower to the surface, we have a lot more collisions. The temperatures is much more higher as well. And the cluster of the gases is much more. So we have more pressure. The higher you go up, the volume increases. So therefore, the thermodynamic kinetic energy decreases, and the gas becomes colder. So they become denser because now they've just transferred that energy with collisions to other gases, and therefore you have less molecules high up because there's a further amount of volume to fill. So the collisions is much less compared to when you're on the ground.
Let's say that I have, let's look at it from a molecular perspective. Let's say that I have 10 particles and I have a flat Earth that has a container, like has a dome, for example. And well, let's say I have a flat Earth that is very small, and I have all my 10 particles at the bottom. And then I say clock is running, and I put everything at motion, right? And every particle starts moving. We agree that all the particles are at the bottom. We all agree that the particles would collide with the bottom, like with the ground. And then they'll start moving upwards after colliding with the ground. And then they'll reach the ceiling at some point. And if you let enough time pass, the distribution of those particles will be equalized in that case. In the case of many different particles, and you have an infinitely large flat Earth, why wouldn't that happen? What would stop the gas particles from hitting the ground, going upwards, and filling everything with the same pressure?
Because of the dynamics I just explained. Let's, for instance, take a mountain. You have to understand, when the gas is on the ground, it is getting heated up, for instance, let's say by the sun, okay, on the ground. because it distributes the energy. So those gases are bouncing around like crazy all over, and then hot air rises. So as that hot air is rising, it's cooling down, and therefore it's becoming denser and it's losing momentum, and it's having less collisions, and therefore it's being spread out more. And that's why when you see on a mountain the air gets thinner, because it gets colder. So as
Wait,
that less and less molecules are getting up, there's less and less energy to compete with it, and there's more space and surrounding air volume to fill. You have the pressure gradient, and therefore we see that cycle happen again. Because if you look on one side of the mountain and you climb up and you go to the other side, it gets high and it gets low and it gets high and low again, because it's following that cycle. Now, like I'm saying, the only reason we don't have the equilibrium of that system is because it's dynamic. You have to take into consideration the size of the container we live in, and the behaviors that these gases have to go through in our surrounding environment. So it cannot sit at equilibrium, because it seeks equilibrium. It doesn't mean it ever gets to equilibrium. The problem you guys have is you negate altogether that according to the second law, you require that containment to have the gas pressure present. And you don't have that container to make your point for gas pressure gradient, because then it will literally go against the Joule's free expansion of gas into the surrounding system.
I don't think that Joule's expansion of gas requires expanding to a nearby system. Joule's expansion of gas works by, the usual example is that you have two systems and you have two pistons and you have all the gas in one of those systems, and in the other system you have no gas. And you have a barrier between those two systems. And you start moving one piston and contracting the other so that it slowly leaves one of the systems and goes to the other one. And that has a particular change. What does that have to do with the expansion of gas in the atmosphere? In that case, in the atmosphere, you would have gases moving everywhere. You wouldn't have that system in which you are moving gases from one container to another with pistons, for example. That is the usual example that we use.
Let's, for instance, take a Coke can, a soda can. You understand, because it's higher than the surrounding pressure. When you open it, the carbon dioxide just spontaneously rushes into the surrounding system.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
That's exactly what would happen if Earth was open.
But
space
that's
vacuum.
not.
Remember, space is supposed to be 10 to the minus 17 torr. So there is hardly any gas there at all. It's literally just availability, and it's literally directed at, with Earth being an open system with a higher pressure, which is 14.7 psi on the ground, directly adjacent to that. There should be no reason why we have any gas at all on the ground, because eventually, actually spontaneously, the gas which comes from the ground area should rush up with no way to stop it from rushing into the surrounding system.
And you said that doesn't happen in flat Earth because of it being a dynamic system. What does being a dynamic system mean? Because, for example, you used the example of collisions happening near a mountain or near the ground that makes the gas be more together, and the temperature being like bigger at that zone, I would say. But then you have a difference in temperatures. Like you said, the gas starts rising and starts filling the volume that is up. And eventually, every single one of the particles that are at the ground do that. And at some point or another, doesn't matter if it takes a million years, the pressures would equalize, even in that example that you put. What would make the cycle not repeat until it equalizes?
And it's impossible to equalize in that. The volume is too great for the amount of moles we have on Earth. Also, we have we go through seasonal cycles. So while we go through those seasonal cycles, you get heating up and you get cooling down. So it's going to recycle the movement of those gases.
Yeah, but in those cases, you would have, for example, let's say that I have a fixed season in this case. Then we change the season to know what happens. I have a fixed season. I have a set of particles near the ground. As you said, they collide with the ground and they heat up. They start going up. They start going up. They reach the ceiling, and all the rest of the particles that haven't rised up yet. We're talking in very informal terms, but it doesn't matter. They do the exact same. They hit the ground, they have a different temperature, they start rising, and that happens with all the particles. At a time t, that doesn't matter if it takes 10,000 years or something, every single particle of the gas will be distributed evenly inside of that system because there's nothing generating a pressure gradient.
That's
You need
false,
some
because we
force
got
or
the
something.
sun. We got the sun generating thermodynamic energy constantly, and then you got the nighttime when it's losing energy, the wintertime when it loses energy, summertime when it gains energy. You can, for instance, go to a desert, and at nighttime the temperature drops considerably compared to the daytime, and you can take that pressure reading. There is a difference with pressure reading at exactly the same spot, same altitude, just based on the temperature. So
Yeah,
the excitement of gases is totally different because of the energy distribution. So it
let's
will
consider
never ever equalize.
let's consider the sun in your example. Now we added the sun. We don't only have the particles in the ground, and I have the sun. And the sun is heating the nearby particles. I don't know how high you claim the sun is, or whether it is outside of the dome or whatever. But let's say that it's inside of the dome in this case. The particles that are near the sun would heat, and then those particles would expand to the nearby areas. Then at some point or another, the heat that the sun provides will have heated the entire system so that it becomes uniform. Like you can do this example with a glass, with a gas can. You take a lighter, you start heating up the gas can, you would temporarily generate a pressure gradient, and then the gradient would equalize at a time t. And that happens no matter how big the container is. You can do it with a butane container, for example, which is like the ones that are used for cars. Some cars that use gas, I don't know, and you start heating that container,
Well,
and at some point or another, you would have the same pressure everywhere.
well, would you understand that with a larger volume container, it would take a lot more energy and time for that to happen compared to a small canister?
Yeah, it would take a lot more, but
And
the
now you
velocity.
have to consider the system we're talking about, Earth, cools down, heats up, cools down, heats up constantly. So it's not able to keep that constant pressure, temperature, like your idea, like the idea you just brought to the small canister.
Let's use that example of heating up and the gases cooling down because of the sun moving. That happens because the gas particles transmit the extra thermal energy that they have, or the extra kinetic energy, to the particles that are nearby. And when the sun is not there eventually, because it's nighttime, they stop receiving heat. They stop heating up, because they transmitted all of that temperature that it had to the nearby particles, and that tried to reach equilibrium. Well, at some point or another, sun will come back, those particles will heat up again, the process will repeat, and slowly but surely, every single particle in the system will reach the same temperature, and at some point or another, you will have all the particles that the sun has left, and it's nighttime, and it
It's,
will be the same temperature as in daytime, because every
it's
particle is at
impossible.
the same temperature.
That's impossible because we have reproduction in gases. For instance, carbon dioxide is given off and methane is given off, and we have photosynthesis. We have cycles, so it keeps on transforming. As the energy is transforming, it's also distributing the transformation of those gases and transferred. So it's always changing. It's impossible to reach equilibrium. You,
Yeah,
you
but
are you are literally ignoring the processes that Earth has to
no
make this conclusion.
let's add that process into our hypothetical system. We already have the sun, we already have the ground, we already have the container. Let's add the gases being constantly generated. say that they are generated at a temperature that is lower than the temperature of the system. At some point or another, that gas will evenly distribute across the container, and at some point or another, the temperature of those particles of gas that I added will reach equilibrium with the particles of gas that I already have in the container. For that equilibrium to not be reached, we need to generate an amount of gas that it's simply insane. We have to generate like the entirety of the gas in a very short, the entirety of the gas that is already inside of the container. Like, I don't know, right now we have a certain amount of liters of gas. We would have to generate that same amount of gas with natural medium or with factories or whatever in a very short amount of time for us to stop the equilibrium from being reached. Because otherwise the equilibrium system in which we have the same pressure everywhere would be reached. We would have to present a force going against that equilibrium that is simply insane. It's impossible to obtain.
Again, it's not
like you get my point, right?
I understand what you're trying to say, but you're not understanding what happens. There's, for instance, do you know how photosynthesis works when it comes to, for instance, a tree?
Yeah, everyone knows how photosynthesis works. You take CO2 and you generate O2, but the temperature doesn't decrease in that process. It just transfers. Of course,
the temperature decreases in that process. It's using energy. It's transferring and transforming the energy, and but it's not. And it's literally creating a different recycled gas. So
it's not leaving the system.
The energy has to be transferred and transformed into something. So there's a difference in distribution constantly.
Yeah, but let's say that a plant takes CO2 and releases O2. The temperature at which that process happens, usually, even though at a molecular level, maybe temperature temporarily increases because of energy being released in the process of breaking down CO2 in carbon and oxygen, the temperature at which the process ends is the same. Otherwise, you would see the plants heating up a lot. You usually don't see the plants heating up a lot, like, I don't know, like a lamp or something. And in that process, you virtually, because you have a decrease in temperature, but that decrease in temperature is negligible in that process. So it cannot account for the stoppage of the equilibrium being reached in the system. Like, we need some barrier for the equilibrium to not be reached.
You're still ignoring the transfer of the energy. I mean, it's not just in the plant itself. It's in the roots. It's in the soil around it. It's in the gases around there as well. Remember, it's transferring all those energies throughout that whole system. And because the volume of the whole system is so big, it's so negligible, it's never going to cause enough time for the equilibrium to happen.
First, the process of creating O2 and carbon, does it generate, is it an endothermic process or is it an exothermic process? Like, does it generate heat or not? Because I think that it is an exothermic process. I don't remember if it is. If it is an exothermic process, then it releases heat. And if it releases heat, it should raise the temperature nearby, and the gas should be expelled at a greater temperature than the gas was at the very start. But that wouldn't aid a lot in the process of the atmosphere not equalizing. Like, if anything, still, no matter what you add, let's say you add a volcano or something, at some point or another, the gas particles will equalize. Even if you add some heat here, some heat there, the amount of particles of the system are moving everywhere, in every direction, in every different velocity you can imagine, and at some point or another they will reach the lower pressure that is above, because there's nothing stopping that from happening. Like, I have a single gas particle and I have a lower pressure outside, it will go up. There's nothing like a barrier or a force, in the case of flat Earth, stopping that particle that is moving up from not moving up. So at some point or another,
the only way it will change direction is, like you said, with a different force. For instance, a plane flying in the air is going to reach where the plane's wing reaches, or a wind current takes it, or it's going to have a collision with another gas particle and change its direction. Simple as that.
Or a container.
You're right, but in that case, then I have the number of particles, and I have less particles up, and the particles are moving everywhere, and at some point they will go up, and at some point they will have to reach equilibrium, even if I generate more gas on the surface.
I disagree totally with that because of all the dynamics happening with the constant removing and transferring and transforming of the cycle of gases. It's impossible for it to reach equilibrium. It seeks equilibrium as much as possible, but you have to understand all these energies are eventually getting transferred through the boundary to the surrounding system, which is the universe. Remember, if Earth is classified as a closed system, energy still gets transferred through the boundary. So it's impossible for it to reach equilibrium if that energy is totally being going into the surrounding system. And because we're still getting energy planted in thanks to the sun and so forth, it's going to keep on doing what it does and move in its seeking equilibrium state. But you'll never reach equilibrium because equilibrium at its absolute equilibrium at itself is also just a hypothetical too. It's based on statistics that say that has to happen apparently eventually, hence why you brought heat death up at the end of the day.
Not really. That's second law, that every system reaches equilibrium. Not every equilibrium is static, because all equilibriums are meta equilibriums, in the sense that, for example, when a certain chemical reaction reaches equilibrium, you just have the same velocity at which one side of the chemical reaction is being generated, and the same velocity at which the other side is being generated. That's the concept of metastatic equilibrium, but that's completely irrelevant. In this case, let's consider your case. And I have an example for this case in particular that uses finite processes. Let's say that I have a set of particles. Let's start with a gradient, just so that you know. Mm-hmm. We start with a gradient inside of a flat Earth with a dome and with a sun and with a moon or something else. And then let's say that still we're not generating anything in the surface. We are going to add that process later. We let the sun and moon move, and the sun slowly heats up all the particles that are near it, because that's what the sun does. It transmits heat. And the particles start heating up. The sun finishes an entire round around the planet. In this case will be the flat Earth, and all the particles that it has been in contact with have been heated up. Those particles transmit heat to the nearby particles, and the sun repeats this process for 365 days, an entire year. All the particles inside of that system, because of the sun being a thing that is constantly heating them up, will at some point or another, we still haven't added the process of generation of energy at the surface, will at some
you're breaking up, man.
Hey, Vlad, how's it going?
How's it going, Roger? I think he's lost connection. It's good to see you, man.
Hey, Roger.
Guys, do me a favor and please hit the like, share the show. I do enjoy this chat with him. You see, this is how debates are supposed to happen, guys.
Yeah, this is really pleasant.
Yeah, he's not.
I mean, I'm actually just sitting listening. I'm not doing anything. I'm just listening. It's actually pretty good.
Yeah, but
can you hear me?
Jay and Vicky.
Can you hear me? I had a
yeah, there we go. Yeah, sorry, we're saying you broke up.
So I was at the first step of the process. We had the gas particles, we had the sun that moved and heated up all those particles. We still don't have the generation of the energy that you talked about in the surface. We're going to add that later. And we have the pressure everywhere equalized, because we don't have that generation yet, and the temperature all equalized. Now we add that interaction in the surface. We add the gas being generated by human activity. We add the plant generating carbon emissions and all of that. Then the process will repeat again, and at some point or another, the temperature everywhere will start rising. The pressure everywhere will start rising. And at some point or another, we should detect, even if actual equilibrium hasn't been perfectly reached, that the temperature up there and the pressure have changed. And the temperature down here has changed, even if we didn't reach the equilibrium. Like, do you understand the entire process?
I disagree, because you're ignoring the fact that gases have different densities.
No, I'm
And
taking that into consideration. Yeah,
no,
I took
no,
it
no, you're not taking density into consideration, because if you take density into consideration, you would understand a denser gas has to take a lot more energy to be able to move the same velocity as something that has less density. So the collisions are going to be less or fewer. The transfer of energy is going to be less or fewer, and it will constantly go through that cycle. So therefore, you'll never have equilibrium of one equal pressure. It will always be a pressure gradient, even when it's seeking equilibrium, because of the densities of those gases.
Wait, you're saying that because we have different gases like nitrogen, carbon dioxide, and all of that, the equilibrium wouldn't be reached in my example. That's
No,
what you're saying.
it wouldn't be reached in an equilibrium of one specific pressure throughout the whole container. It would be impossible.
Okay, so in the example I put, let's say we add all those gases. We add nitrogen, we add carbon dioxide, and that happens at the very start. We consider that the atmosphere has the same composition as it does in real life, and it has the same gradient as it does in real life. And then we start the clock, and we let the sun move, the sun move, the moon move, and everything starts heating up. I do agree that the distribution will be reached at a different time because we need to add more heat for the heavier particles to go up. But the other different particles, the other things that we have in the atmosphere will at some point start heating up, start going up, start equalizing the pressure, even though we have the other particles down here that haven't gone up because they haven't received enough heat. And when those particles that are still heating up reach the upper part of the atmosphere, then the pressure there, the temperature there, and every other intensity parameter will also equalize. The only thing that adding those particles will do is that the equilibrium is reached at like you need more time. That's the only thing that it would add, because you have to not only hit the particles that are lesser in terms of mass, but you also have to heat up the particles that require more heat to go up. But the only thing that would do is add time to the equilibrium being reached. The equilibrium will still be reached. Nothing stops it from being
Not
reached.
true, because
Even
remember,
if
you
the
have to
system is
understand.
dynamic.
You also have to understand the sun is not standing still. The sun is staying in one place, and it's moving 15 degrees an hour. So it's moving across the earth. And as seasons, it depends on height. It can change its elevation based on the season. So it's also hot or cold at certain times. So it's not giving a uniform energy transference as you trying to make it sound like. There's no uniform energy 365 days a year. It's
No,
changing.
you're right. That's
Changing
what.
constantly. So therefore, it's impossible for it to go to equilibrium, because let's say the sun is in this one location, and as it's moving, it's only localized the energy in that part of the system, and as soon as it's moving away, that part of the system that already had the energy transferred is already transforming and transferring that energy into its surrounding particles and system around it, which is already taking that equilibrium away, which is seeking the equilibrium. But because you are trying to claim a pressure gradient dispersal into a single pressure, because of this is a total 180. It goes against what is being discussed,
That's
because
what I
you
consider,
need
though.
to the time of the amount of energy put into the system and the time amount of energy put out of the system don't coincide to reach equilibrium. The only equilibrium that is reached here is in the universe itself, because the surrounding system is taking the energy from the transference of the closed system. But
Wait,
I would love to go talk about how you are able to justify how you can have the gas pressure in the first instance without your container, because, like we said, it is possible to be explained in the container. But how would you tell us how it's possible without containment?
yeah, but let's go back to what we were talking about, because it's completely related to that, because pressure gradients are related to that topic. In the case that we were talking about, do you think that I consider the sun to be static? Because I said that it was moving.
Sorry, say again?
Do you think that in my example, the example that I presented before, I considered the sun to be static? Because I am sure I said it was moving. In the case of the flat
moving.
Earth.
I was just trying to make it you understand, because you are false equivocating and making the system seem as that the sun is constantly giving the same amount of energy in the same place, so it's always going to reach equilibrium, which is impossible.
No, not at all. That's not what I said. The sun is constantly moving. You're right. But at some point or another, let's say that a whole day has passed, it reaches the same position it was in the day before. Maybe a little difference because in the case of the flat Earth, maybe it moves upwards, downwards. We don't know. But at some point or another, it reaches the same place. Those particles, once the sun leaves that zone, when it's nighttime, that have extra heat, start transmitting that heat to the nearby particles, and that elevates the temperature of the overall system. The sun goes back there, generates more heat, the particles repeat the same process, and it is repeated, 365 days. At some point or another, you will have an equilibrium because all the particles are being heated.
We have clouds, we have cloudy days, we have rainy days, we have snowy days, foggy days. It's always going to change the amount of energy being transferred and transformed by the sun. So it's impossible to have what you're claiming. Like I said, you're ignoring the fact of the dynamics of taking place in this closed system. So
no, let's
just saying it's going to reach equilibrium isn't making it going to reach equilibrium. But I've been happy to answer everything how it would happen on the flat Earth. Can you please answer how would you be able to have the gas pressure to have your pressure gradient without a container?
It's important that we debate this topic because it's linked to that question, because it's linked to the fact, how do you create a pressure gradient? And for this, we need to know how a pressure gradient is created. And in a flat Earth, with no force stopping the particles from moving, you cannot. In the example you reproduce, you can... Yeah,
I just
that's
agree.
what I'm going to...
we have pressure gradient.
That's what I'm going to...
with me. The dynamic of the system shows a pressure gradient.
No,
what I'm asking for you to do is to show us how you can have this pressure without containment.
Well, that I'm going to do that, but we have to analyze the case in which you don't have a force, which is the
we
case
do
of the
have a force. It's called the entropic force.
Well, it's not really a force. Like the entropy, the only thing that entropy does is tell you in which direction the system will move. It doesn't generate a force per se. Like
but
entropy is just...
vector is based on the force, though.
Let's say the definition of Boltzmann of entropy, like the amount of microstates that are compatible with macrostates, that doesn't generate a force.
It was too big.
Well, the movement is based on a force. You would agree?
Yeah, but that's not necessarily entropy. It's movement.
It is.
Like entropy is more
transfer
than
of energy, dude. Transfer of energy.
Yeah. But entropy is related to energy, but that doesn't have much to do with just movement. It has to do with a lot of things, entropy.
Because you would agree that the kinetic energy in itself is force.
No. A force is the change of momentum in a certain amount of time. That's the definition of
kinetic energy, yes.
No,
because
but
remember when we said you heat it up due to the temperature, that's what thermodynamics is. It's the intermolecular bonds moving and jiggling faster. The movement of the intermolecular bonds, thanks to energy, to temperature, is a force. So temperature is acting as a force in its intermolecular kinetic energy to cause the kinetic energy to move it. So it's a force.
You're referring to particles colliding with each other with different temperature, hence the temperature of the particle that has more temperature getting the other particle heated because they collided. That's what you mean, and that's a force. That's what you said.
No, what I'm saying is the energy is transferred through the temperature, which is a force because it's causing it to move faster. It's causing velocity to change. So that means it's imparting force into the system. It's transferring energy. It's transferring energy into force.
Temperature itself is not a force. You may have a difference in temperature between two particles that are moving at different velocities. The force happens when they collide. Temperature itself just describes a state of the particles, like how many meters per second the particle is moving. But temperature itself is not a force. A force happens when two things collide in this case.
Does temperature cause the molecules to move faster?
The collision causes the particles to move faster.
No, temperature causes the intermolecular bonds to move faster to have the collision.
the intermolecular bonds, not the particles would be moving faster, not the intermolecular bonds. Well, that doesn't matter. You have the particles at different temperatures.
The kinetic theory of gas is based on intermolecular bonds of the gases. The particles themselves move in a different velocity because of the intermolecular bonds, molecules that are moving at its speed because of the temperature change. So, in fact, the temperature is causing the gases to move faster, which is the cause of force. So, temperature is a force.
The kinetic theory of gases doesn't necessarily say that. The kinetic theory of gases, for example, for an ideal gas, you take a certain gas, you consider the collisions with a wall, and you also have to consider a gas going through a cylinder with collisions. That's the other case. And using that, considering the collisions of that gas, the movement of the gas, you equal the temperature with the kinetic energy of the gas. But a gas having kinetic energy, a gas moving, it isn't necessarily a force itself. It's just temperature. The collision is a force itself, but temperature is a state of the particles. Like you may have two particles that have the same temperature and never collide, and in that case, you have no collision and temperature. Temperature itself is not. But this is a completely unrelated topic to what we were talking about.
No, what I'm trying to say is, because you're saying a force is directed by something causing a movement. So what I'm saying is, if you're claiming temperature is causing that movement in the kinetic bonds, therefore you could be claiming that temperature is a force, correct?
No, the temperature
Or is it
generates...
just the transfer, or is it just the transfer of the energy which gives the collisions, which gives force?
Wait, let's agree on terms. You agree that temperature is the kinetic energy of the gases? That's basic.
Yes, 100% agree. So it's not a force in itself. I'm just trying to understand, because it sounded like you were trying to say it's a force.
No, it's not a force. The temperature itself is not a force. It generates movement, and two things moving doesn't imply that they will collide. I don't know, like two cars passing near my
Okay, so
home.
we agree on that. No, I was misunderstanding you then. Sorry, that's what I was trying to figure out.
Okay, well, then going to the previous case that you presented about the clouds that may change the heat that is received at a certain zone because you have a cloudy day, for example. Well, the clouds will absorb the extra heat. The difference in transmission of heat itself will be null. The only thing that will happen is that the ground receives less heat and the clouds receive more heat because it's acting like a damping agent. But at some point or another, those clouds will release their water. That water will go down. That water will hit the ground. And that process that I presented before of the sun moving around with no clouds will be the same, because at some point or another that water has to fall, and we will have the case of the Earth that doesn't have clouds, with a constantly rising temperature and a pressure equalizing. Because at some point or another, that water will go down. So you cannot really consider it like the different conditions of the day making the energy transfer being different. No, that water will go down at some point or another. There isn't a difference in the amount of energy that, I don't know, Australia gets, unless there's a different season. That's right. In contrast with, I don't know, United States. Even if you have clouds and all of that, because even if those clouds heat up, that heat is going to be transmitted to the surface when it rains. So in my case, in which I consider the temperatures equalizing at some point, or the pressure equalizing at some point, will come to fruition.
Okay,
you won't have the difference.
Let me try and explain it another way to you. Let's, for instance, take a light bulb that generates heat, and for instance, like a chicken coop or something, and you're having it swinging on a arm bar, so it's moving across the room. You'd understand, as it's on this side of the room, it's heating up, and as it's moving, it's busy cooling off from the point it's already going, and it's starting to heat up where it's moving. I'd agree with that, just like the sun.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so by the time that it has moved away and it's cooled down already, that energy has already transferred into the surrounding system, correct? So it's gone back to its formal state before the light was there. Now the light comes back
Not
and heats
really.
up
No,
again.
there's a
It goes
mistake
back
there.
and recycles the same type of energy. It gives exactly the same. And by the time it gets there, the other side now has cooled down the same, and that energy has now transferred to the surrounding system. So nothing's really changing, does it?
But there's a mistake there. Let's say that the light bulb heated up the particles that were at one side when it was in the peak of the pendulum. Let's say that we have pendulum, and we have the pendulum itself reaches the maximum height at 2 points. Because we have 2 points in which the pendulum reaches the maximum height and then it moves to the other side, right? That's what a pendulum does. When the gas particles are heated by the light bulb in one side and the light bulb starts moving, you're right, the gas particles start transmitting that temperature to the nearby particles. But the temperature at which, let's say, that zone will V, once time has passed, will not be the same temperature at which it was before we put the light bulb on. Like, it won't be the same. The equilibrium temperature will have risen. That's what happened.
That's false. That's false. You're forgetting the transfer of the energy to the surrounding system. I think that's where your error is. You forget the transfer of energy to the surrounding system. As soon as it transfers to the surrounding system, it reaches back. Remember the zeroth law I was talking about? If I had to heat up this cup with a cup of coffee, eventually it will become room temperature. So I can heat it up again and stick it back on the table. It will reach room temperature again. It's going to keep on doing that because of the zeroth law.
Because you're in contact with a temperature reservoir. You know what that is in terms of thermodynamics?
It's exactly the same. It's exactly the same with a demonstration I just gave with the chicken coop. You have a surrounding system. Everything has to go to equilibrium in the surrounding system. The only system is the hypothetical universe where the entropy is always increasing. You understand?
Yeah, but you know why there's no difference in terms of the temperature. Like when you put on a stove, for example, the man at the news report doesn't say that the temperature at your city has risen, because the temperature rise because of you putting on a stove would be negligible. Like, it won't impact the temperature of your city just putting on a stove.
Agree.
Well, that happens because the energy transfer has to make up for so many particles that the increasing temperature would be in the order of 0.0000000, like
Very
an
small.
infinite amount of zeros, and
So therefore, we'll never reach equilibrium. That's my whole point. So you're agreeing with me?
there's a small temperature change. But when
then explain why you have places that have never used to get snow and get snow now.
Well, but that doesn't have to do with us not reaching equilibrium. That has to do with the
It does,
temperature.
because the temperature is not rising. Because according to your theory you're placing, the Earth's temperature has to carry on rising until it becomes like a pressure cooker, you can say.
Yeah, the medium temperature must do that.
And doesn't happen.
Yeah, but that's what I was saying. The fact that a place is cooling down inside of that system in some way or another, if it's an isolated system like a flat Earth, means that at some place, in a different place, it has to be heating up, because the energy itself of the flat Earth cannot change. There's no energy leaving if you have an isolated system.
The energy is leaving. We said, wait, that's false. Of course the energy is leaving. We're in a closed system because of the waters above. So there is a system outside our system. We're just in a closed system. We're not in an open system. Of course there has to be energy.
You say that energy is leaving the system.
Yes, it's in a closed system. Yeah. Energy always leaves the system.
So temperature is going down then because it's
no. Remember, the sun is inside. The sun is inside our system. Okay. But that doesn't negate the fact that the energy can leave the system. It's a closed boundary.
Okay, so you do have constant matter, but temperature remains constant because of the sun. That's what you mean? Like the temperature, like you have a system that in which energy can live, but mass doesn't live. That's what you're proposing.
Yeah, mass can't live. Exactly, as a closed system is.
Okay, but in the case we proposed of the sun going around and it heating up different zones, then anything the sun hits will cause that zone to temporarily heat up, then transfer the heat to the nearby particles, and all of that process repeats a certain amount of time. I don't know, 365 days, and at some point or another, that extra temperature reaches the waters above that you were talking about, and is transmitted to the outside. We don't know what the outside is. Well, in that case, even then, due to the fact that matter cannot live, even if the temperature is not really doesn't really reach equilibrium, the mass will reach equilibrium because it cannot leave the system. So you
Mass
will
stays
have
the same. Remember, whatever is started in the system as mass can never leave, so it stays the same. There is no such thing as mass equilibrium, though.
No, I refer to mass equilibrium in the sense that because mass cannot leave, the equilibrium state of the system, when it comes to mass distribution, will be reached because it cannot be perturbed by the outside. The outside is only getting temperature out of it.
That's also false, because the gases change densities based on the temperature. So it's going to keep on changing the volume of the volume based in the system, and therefore the mass cannot be kept constant. Okay, we're also having cycles like decomposition. You're having we're having different cycles on Earth. If you leave, for instance, a tin can outside long enough, it's going to rust away. The masses are changing constantly because it's transferring the energy and transforming that energy into something else. I mean, when you, for instance, eat a banana and throw the banana peel away, it's decomposing. The masses are constantly changing. So I don't know how to explain this to you, but it's always, everything is constantly moving in different ways. So it's impossible to have equilibrium of anything. It seeks equilibrium, but it can't reach it. So can we now move on to where I'm asking you, can you show us gas pressure without containment?
I haven't responded. But I haven't responded to that point though, and it's vital for what I'm going to explain, because you need my point is that you need a force of some kind to generate a pressure gradient, and if I leave that point, then it won't make sense. You realize that, right? Because I have to create that point.
We do have a force.
Well, but the problem,
you guys don't.
The problem in this case is that the equilibrium, like you said, if it is reached, we will have the same pressure everywhere. So it is important to debate that.
It can't reach that. Just explain to you why it can't reach that. Just explain why.
Well, and ignoring it. That's what I'm going to be debating, because it's the main point here.
No, the main point here is you need to actually also converse with defending your side. I've defended now everything. We've explained it through thermodynamics that we can have pressure gradients through the thermodynamic closed system, and it will never reach equilibrium. It's seeking equilibrium, but it can't reach it because of the dynamics system we live in. I want to know how you are claiming to have your gas pressure if you don't have a contained system.
Well, my explanation.
So, how's it going? Sorry.
Yeah. Just a stupid question. I'm not an expert in all that, scientific stuff. But when I think about it, I don't think there's nothing on this earth that can exist without containment. Everything has containment. A soul has containment, a body, man's containment, is
everything's contained.
Everything is contained. Only in death you have no containment. You have the soul going according to what we know. But everything needs a containment. That's the principle of life. You cannot have nothing without containment. Not even gas.
What do we mean by containment?
A container, dude. Container.
That's a circular definition. That doesn't work.
What he's trying to explain is, by observation through anything, you cannot show me one thing that does not have containment. Even gas itself has containment.
Containment means that something is stopping a certain amount of mass. In this case, it can be energy. But in this case, we're talking about mass, from going to another place. That can be.
Not really. It defines a volume. You can move. The container can move, no problem. But it defines a volume that can expand or maybe reduce itself, but it's still containment.
Now we're talking about the mass that is inside of the hypothetical physical barrier container. Well, what stops the gas from going?
It's actually provable.
Well, we're talking about a hypothetical case.
It's going back from the way. Sorry, I want to keep you on this. Can you please show me gas pressure without containment? Because that's what I actually would love. Because I've been asking Globus for 15 years now on this, and I would really like to get an answer.
Well, I have to define containment first for us to talk about that. And if you agree with the definition, I can proceed.
Okay.
When we talk about containment, and we talk, let's imagine, because I don't have right now a gas can, so it has to be a hypothetical because I don't have one right here. Imagine that we have a gas inside of that gas can. And the gas, for some reason, we don't know, we have to think, we are going to try to deduct this, is not moving outside of the gas can. It's intuitive that it won't leave the gas can as long as it remains closed. But why is it not leaving? The reason is because the particles inside of the gas can are colliding with the surfaces on the inside of the container of the gas can. And so what is really causing the particles from not leaving the gas can? The force that is generated in the walls, the contact force, which in this case isn't really contact because particles never touch each other. They remain at a finite distance. I don't know the term of the force, but it's a form of electromagnetic force that doesn't allow you to touch something really, but rather being repelled from touching it. Well, the thing that is containing the particles is a force. The force of the walls that is being generated each time the gas particles collide with it is containing it. So fundamentally, what is making the particles not moving outside of the gas can is a force. So a force is what is containing it, and we can generalize this to any force. Any force can eventually contain a gas. Like if I have a perfect sphere of a certain thermodynamic potential, even if it is not a physical barrier, I can contain a gas. We cannot do that because it's practically impossible for us to generate a particular electromagnetic distribution in such a way that it doesn't allow a gas to leave that place. But if we consider the definition that we just laid down, then it can happen. A force can contain a gas.
Yeah.
And it can be any force. Any force, not only the physical contact.
I would agree to
force.
a certain point, but I do love the fact that you are giving, again, an explanation using, for instance, a mug as a container. And it's just open. So yeah, I would agree. The pressure is there, the force is there because of the container. Now, I'm asking you, how do you have your gas without the container? Because you're giving us an example with the container now.
But do you know why I start with a container? Because I'm trying to generalize the thing that I am talking about. So I start with the simplest case, which is
our argument.
Which is our argument. And we deducted from that case that the force is the thing containing the matter inside of the gas can, for example.
Can that force exist?
And from
My
that,
point
we can
can that force
that
exist without the container?
So you're saying, can that force contain it even if there are no physical walls? That's what you're saying. Well, we have more than one force.
No, but remember, the reason I'm asking
force
is because your example now was using a container wall to denote the force. So if you're taking that container wall away now, you don't have that force to contain it because the container was the container.
But I just explained why did I use that example, because I'm trying to generalize what is making the gas contained, and from that we deducted that a force is making the gas.
Yes, but remember that that's contained. A specific force based on a container. It's the force that cannot exist without a container. So if you're trying to take your example and say, well, I need to take the container away and just say a force is containing, you have to have a product for that force to exist. So if you're taking the actual cause for the force away, you can't denote saying, I got force, because you've taken that cause away.
Well, Of course, if I take force will disappear, but there isn't just the contact force. There are a lot of different forces that do not depend on contact, on direct contact of particles. Electromagnetic forces can stop something from going in a certain direction if it opposes the direction of movement. And in that sense, if we were to generate a perfect electromagnetic jail, we would be able to contain a gas. And that means that we can contain a gas with a force. In general, that's what I was saying.
But the electromagnetic forces, are you claiming, for instance, gas is ionized? Because you can contain ionized gas with a magnetic force.
Yeah. If the
the gases we breathe are not ionized though, so you
don't
can't use
require
the magnetic force to claim it's holding it in.
You don't require the gas itself to be ionized, because if you have a strong enough electromagnetic field, practically any gas can become ionized. If you have
that's what I'm saying. It becomes
even noble gases.
But that's what I'm saying. It makes it ionized.
Yeah, so you're saying
we don't
that
breathe ionized gas. That's my whole point. So you can't claim the electromagnetic forces is what's holding it down to Earth as a force, because then you would be breathing ionized gas.
Do we agree that in that case that I presented, we have electromagnetic forces acting as a container? In that case, not necessarily in a real life, but it's containing
if the gas is ionized, yes.
Well, that's my point. You don't only need contact forces to contain a gas.
No, I agree. You require a force. I 100% agree. But the problem is you don't have a force to make your claim.
Well, we have to generalize it further now, because we don't only need forces. We need something that stops a particle in a certain position in space, I don't know, position x equals 1, from moving to position x equals 2. Forces do that. That's the natural way we think of things. A force, if you have, I don't know, someone pushing you in a certain direction, they are stopping you from moving in the direction you were trying to move. So a force can achieve that. But if we consider, we have two interpretations for gravity, the Newtonian and the relativity. But the relativity one can be approximated with the Newtonian one if you do a mathematical limit. But that's a different thing that I would prefer not to bring up, because it's mathematically heavy, and I don't think anyone wants to see the whole deduction. But if considering the Newtonian gravity to exist, then we will generalize to relativity. If we consider the Newtonian gravity to exist, then it would act as a container of those gas particles, because it's stopping them from moving to a certain place, like the electromagnetic force, and it's not ionizing them.
Okay, so let's base it this way. You trying to evoke gravity as a force, correct?
Yes, we will generalize it with relativity now, but yeah.
But gravity cannot be seen as a force thanks to general relativity. You would understand that too.
That was what I was talking about. We're going to generalize it to relativity now.
Yeah. So if we move it to relativity, which superseded Newtonian gravity, we cannot accept gravity as a force. So therefore, gravity cannot be used to hold gas down as container.
The problem is that when we're talking about relativity, we can equate it with Newtonian gravity in certain situations. You know why a black hole, for example, it cannot be modeled with a Newtonian gravity? Because it has a singularity, which is a position in which you consider infinite mass, and that cannot be explained by Newtonian mechanics. In Newtonian mechanics, it makes no sense to have an infinite mass. But in relativity, when you take a limit, which doesn't mean that the mass itself is infinite, but it tends to infinity, then you can approximate from relativity to Newtonian. Matter of fact, there are proofs online that you can see, mathematical proofs, of you taking relativity and deriving Newton's law from it. So we can consider Newton's law, even though relativity would be, in our case, a pseudo-force, because it isn't a force by itself, but it's the curvature of space-time. Yeah, so we can talk about Newtonian gravity.
But you would agree that a mathematic proof isn't a natural phenomena proof.
Well, a mathematic proof is the strongest level of rigorosity that you can acquire.
No, it's a logical proof. It's a logical proof based on language of math.
Yeah, but do you agree that length?
Does
do you agree-
that mean if I make an equation that unicorn farts exist in black holes, does that mean it, because it would be based on mathematical proof, that
do you
unicorn farts really exist in a black hole? No. So
Do you
because
agree?
because you're trying to derive gravity can be interchangeable between Newtonian as a force, general relativity not as a force, but because you wanted to be selective to containment for gas, it doesn't make it so. I can guarantee you can't even give me any scientific validation or experiment that gravity even exists.
Well, I have a paper right here, and I can show it to you.
papers,
But
thank you.
let's go with the thing that we were talking about, because you presented a lot of points there.
I just want to say something before to leave, because I got to go. Just you
Yeah.
know, the first guy that started to talk about the the Earth not being in the center of the universe, and that there might be life on other planets. It's called Nicholas of Cusa. He's a Catholic German bishop, in 1440. And that proves also that the world didn't believe in it, because he just said that. So the thing is that that guy put all this knowledge into a book that he called Learned Ignorance. And this is very important to know, because you can teach people ignorance. You can make them ignorant with knowledge, with fake knowledge, with fake gibberish, with fake science. And you can make them feel like, they know a lot of things, but actually it's nothing. It's all fake. It's all it's ignorance. You understand?
I'd agree with that.
So that's interesting to know. You just check it out. Learn ignorance. This is not, I didn't write it. This is that guy. So
Yeah,
be careful
I
not to
wanted-
just
I wanted
Yeah.
to say something. I do agree with that when it comes to certain things that are not science and are considered science, like sociology or something like that, and some areas of psychology that are considered science but are not. But I have a completely different view of that when it comes to physics. I don't completely disagree with you, but I do disagree with you when it comes to one area.
But look, gravity doesn't exist. A lot of
Disagree.
sciences don't exist. The Big Bang doesn't exist. Space don't exist. So all that is also part of what you call, science and physics. But it's not. It doesn't exist. So you can
But I do
you
disagree about
you
that.
can play with that all day long, but it's all fake. It's all
Issue is that I disagree with that.
I
So
know, of
I
course, I know.
fundamentally have a different position than you. Obviously, I'm going to negate what you're saying because I have a different position.
Can I ask you? The guys in chat are asking what's your name because they really like you. I also like you, man. I think you are one of the best globers that I've debated so far. Respect you, man. Really appreciate it.
No, my name is. I don't want to reveal my real name. I'm just Greed. Like people call me Greed.
Okay, call him
Not
Greed,
because
guys.
I'm
But I'd love
greedy
to have you
or-
on again sometime.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
ask one question of
Nice to meet
him
you.
right quick? Can
Yeah.
any of these experiments that you're talking about, like electrostatic forces or electric forces, can you develop any of these forces without physicality? In other words, the things that you're using to create an electrostatic force or an electric force, are they physical? Or can you create these forces without physicality?
Well, Newton made that same question many years ago, if a force can exist without a medium, because electrostatic forces and magnetic forces, for some reason, can stop objects from moving despite us not having a medium that makes that contact force. Because usually we think of forces as, I don't know, you pushing the wall. Then you're receiving a force from the wall that is the contact force. And we usually think of forces like that. But electromagnetic forces do not work that way. Gravity doesn't work that way. Even if you don't believe in it, hypothetically, it wouldn't work in that way.
No, that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking, can you create an electrostatic force without any physicality?
Without an object that generates a magnetic field?
Yeah.
Well,
Does they just appear out of nowhere, or you actually have to have some a magnet to create an electromagnetic force? You have to have a physicality of it to start with, right?
Maybe by pure statistics, distortion at some place can exist without any object, like the space behaving weird at a certain place. But usually you require an object causing that. So
that's what I was trying to get to. I'm trying to get to
something
physicality,
physical, yeah.
something we can demonstrate. So physics is demonstratable, am I right? Or is it all theoretical physics? Is where I'm going. So
Part
far,
of physics-
I've heard nothing but theoretical about it. So.
Part of physics depends on theory because you require math to do physics. If you don't have math, you cannot make any calculations, relations. Like if you don't have math, you don't have physics. That's
I
the
didn't say
problem.
anything about math. I'm talking about actual demonstrations in physics. Math is just an equation that you can actually show how it happens.
It's a part of physics, though. It's the theory part of physics, not the physical part of physics, and you need it.
Yeah, so
because it's
they describe the physical part of physics with math. That's what I'm saying.
I wouldn't agree that mathematics work as a description because you can deduct things from mathematics more than just describe. For example, the usual example that is used is the Pythagorean theorem. By just measuring the opposite side and the adjacent side, I have the length of the hypotenuse, even though I didn't measure it. And so mathematics can lead us to deduct things about the world even without measuring them, because it creates conditions that are extremely strong because they are based on logic, which is the strongest foundation of knowledge of humans that we have beyond physics, beyond anything. Logic is above everything, and math is a part of logic that deals with quantities. And in that sense, math may be even more important than physics. So these theoretical things that you talked about, like made-up things, no, they are not made-up. They are very
I'm not saying they're
important.
made up. I just said mathematics was a measurement or an equivalent. It's equivalent to a measurement. That's all it is.
It's more than that. It's much more than that. You can deduct things using mathematics.
Okay, give me a real good example in physics where you use mathematics to deduce what you didn't do in the physical.
Easy. I have a car moving at a certain speed, and I say the car hasn't moved yet, but I know the speed, and I tell you, where is it going to be in 6 seconds? That didn't happen yet. We don't know where the car will be. We haven't seen the car in that position it will be in 6 seconds. But with the velocity and with the time, you multiply velocity times time, and you get the distance.
Yeah,
and from that, we can deduct where the car will be using mathematics. The mathematics told us where the car will be. We deducted something.
Well, yes, but the actual act creates the physics, right?
What are you referring to?
Get results without doing the said travel, correct? So in reality, you can deduce where it's going to be. That doesn't mean you're actually going to do. You have to actually physically do the work.
Well, I don't understand. I don't understand
to your mathematics.
Do you think I need to see the car there?
Sir.
Do you think that I need?
So listen, he's saying mathematics is a description that's only used to describe things in reality. Without the thing that's describing the mathematics in reality, it's not real. It's just a concept.
Ding.
Well, but we just deducted where the car will be.
So physics is not requiring mathematics. It's mathematics that is requiring this physics, because physics is what mathematics is describing. You're trying to make an argument that is saying that physics need mathematics when they don't.
Physics is not what mathematics is describing. Mathematics describes a lot of things that are not necessarily physical.
No, mathematics is only a conceptual measure of things that is described in physics. Physics doesn't require mathematics to be true. Yeah. Mathematics, listen, sir, listen very carefully. This is where you're getting confused. Mathematics is a conceptual measure. Without physics, without physical reality, mathematics is only a concept in logic. So physics doesn't require mathematics. Physics requires demonstration.
But are you saying that if we don't have physical reality, we don't have math? Well, if we don't have physical reality, we don't exist.
No. Physical reality will always be there, either with or without mathematics, sir.
Yeah, the mathematics is just a language. Mathematics is just a language. It's just there to describe. But it's the same as, for instance, you can have someone talking in Chinese, you can have someone saying in Spanish. They'd have different languages, but they're describing the same thing. Mathematics is just a language used to describe things. So you can use maths to describe physics. You can use maths to describe observation, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist if maths doesn't exist. Maths is just to talk. It's just describing what's happening. Maths doesn't cause the thing. That's what he's saying.
Problem is that we just deducted something using mathematics, something that is only meant to describe. How did we do that?
You just describe what you can actually do in the physical world. That's basically it, dude. There's nothing else.
No, I didn't. I deducted something using mathematics. Like you remember
But I'd love to get back to the actual format that we had, the one-on-one, and then I would love to. Would you be able to show me the scientific hypothesis and experiment for gravity?
Well, we were talking about containers, so in that sense, we said that the existence of a pressure gradient in itself proves that gravity exists. Yeah.
No, but that's not my point. Remember, you are evoking gravity for the containment. So to evoke gravity, you're going to have to show me that gravity can be shown. And I'm simply telling you, gravity is not shown because there's no science for gravity.
I'm making a univocal relationship. I'm saying not only can the container only the pressure gradient only exist with gravity, but also that if the pressure gradient exists, then gravity must exist. I'm making a relationship of if one thing happens, the other must happen too. Because
that's circular reasoning.
No, that's
begging the question. That's begging the question, affirming the consequence, circular reasoning.
No, that's
not proving. It's not proving gravity exists. I can do exactly the same. Well, because unicorn farts exist in a black hole, therefore we have pressure gradients. So because we have pressure gradients, therefore unicorn farts exist in a black hole. Does that make logical sense to you?
Yeah, but that's not what I was saying. I said that I have an implication that goes both sides. Those things exist. Like, for example, if you don't have the concept of, if you don't have the concept of a being, you don't have the concept of a man. And if you have the concept of a man, you have the concept of a being. The same thing happens in my example with gravity. One thing depends on the other, and if one thing exists, the pressure gradient, gravity exists.
No. You first have to prove gravity exists to make the argument that gravity is the cause for the pressure gradient. We already explained earlier using the closed dynamic system that you can have pressure gradients due to the dynamics of the how everything works.
Well, I disagree.
So we gave an example how the pressure gradients happen in a closed system due to the dynamics. But now you are going and saying, well, guys, I believe gravity exists because of pressure gradients. But you can't have those pressure gradients without a container existing, even based on your original example of a force using a container.
Now that's why I said what I said, Flatzoid, that we had to debate the topic of the pressure gradients because it's being relevant right now. And I was trying to respond to your point about the pressure gradient inside of your flat Earth. I was trying to say that it was wrong, but we diverged to another topic. I wanted to talk about that topic because it's related to what we're saying now. The pressure gradient cannot exist even if we consider all the things that you said. And I wanted to make a hypothetical case considering all of those things and prove that still the system will reach equilibrium. And even if it does a lot of time, if it takes a lot of time to take equilibrium, we will see noticeable changes between the stage in which equilibrium is reached and the stage in which it is not. And that's what I was trying to talk about. So if we can go back to that topic that I didn't finish debating because I couldn't respond to your point, then it would be great because it is related to what we're saying. Because I'm saying that pressure gradient can only exist with gravity, which means that we have to debate the other topic.
Hello, guys. I didn't want to interrupt. Just hello, everyone.
Hey, thanks. Good to see you, man. The thing is, based on all gas laws, the pressure gradient will exist in a container. You even agreed with me when we said about the different dynamics based on temperature, volume, and pressure. Those three things combined, continually changing, make the pressure gradient. Now you're running away from you made a positive claim that you do not need a container to have this pressure gradient. But that's where I disagree with you, because if you're making the positive claim that goes against the second law of thermodynamics, Well, you, by God, have to prove it to me, not just say, I want to talk about pressure gradients in a closed system, which I believe doesn't exist. Well, literally, that's what the thermodynamic principles say will exist.
Because it is related to claiming that you need a physical container to contain gas. The fact that pressure gradients can only be generated with gravity necessarily implies that the problem that generates in flat Earth, that all pressure equalizes, must mean that gravity in real life must exist, because the other model isn't explaining it. That's the reason why I'm talking about the pressure gradients debate, because we need it for that case. For the case
Okay,
that we're talking about.
let's break it down like this. What is gas pressure?
Don't go that far back. We don't need to establish every.
We do, because gas pressure, by definition, requires containment, and you know this. So when you're trying to inference gas pressure without containment, you're literally violating what gas pressure is.
No, not really. What's pressure? The definition, like the measurement of pressure. What is it in general? What
PSI?
No, pressure is force per unit. Force in general is pressure in general is force over units of area. I don't need a container containing the gas for the gas particles to hit me. I just need gas particles to hit me. Like I don't
area
need the
itself, dude. You need the area.
I am the area. I am the area. I'm a person that has surface area, and the gas particles are hitting me, and that's pressure. I don't need a container for that to occur, for gases to hit me. Like, do you understand what I'm saying?
Okay,
pressure is equal to force
it's
over
bugger off
area.
into the vacuum that you say you have. It has to press the other direction too.
Is this what you're claiming?
3D.
Is this what you're claiming?
What? I don't know the site. I don't know the image. I don't know where you take this. Where you took this from. So
it's from Libertex Chemistry. Gas pressure.
And what does it say? Because you took it out
the
of
Earth's
the
atmosphere exerts a pressure, as does any other gas. Although we do not normally notice atmospheric pressure, we are sensitive to pressure changes. For example, when your ears pop during takeoff and landing while flying. When you dive underwater, gas pressure is caused by the force exerted by gas molecules colliding with surfaces of objects. You would agree with that?
It's exactly what I said. The gases hitting your body. That's pressure in our case.
So you would agree that there needs to be a container?
No, that's
otherwise the gas will just escape.
Well, that's a different debate, whether the gas will remain in a place or not. But if we start from a place in which we don't have a container, nor we have gravity nor anything, and I have a little dude in the middle of nowhere with gas, that gas will expand. But during a certain time, he will have pressure, even though the gas will expand, because the gas particles are moving everywhere. Some of the gas particles that even some of them are escaping, some other of them will hit the guy because they are moving in every direction. Do you agree with that?
Yes, gas moves in all directions. That's my whole point. That's why we require a container to exist for this force to happen.
Well, and that's why we have to go back to the pressure gradients debate, because the fact that the pressure gradient can only be generated by gravity, which was my point, that we diverged from that point to another debate, is relevant to this. But if I can return to that topic,
it's the same debate. Wait, no, you're trying to run away. You're trying to run away from the fact that you can't defend the claim of gas pressure without containment.
No, I need to debate the pressure gradients to then
deduct that pressure gradient
comes off. Wait. Yeah, this is the thing I'm saying. Pressure gradient comes after the gas pressure existing, and the gas pressure existing requires containment. Just like it says, pressure is defined as the force per unit area on a surface. So if you don't have a surface, you don't have gas pressure, correct?
Yes, you are a surface.
Great, I agree. And the ground is a surface. And as you said, gas moves in all directions constantly.
Yes.
And the gas can only change direction with a force or a collision.
With anything that stops it from moving to a certain place. It can be gravity, consider it relativity, but yeah.
No, gravity is not a force. That's my whole point. Even especially based on relativity, it's not a force.
I told you.
My point is the gas will hit and it will just go out into space and never return.
Well, so I just said like 10 minutes ago that you can deduct the Newtonian law for force derived based on gravity using relativity. So you can use...
You can't. The one is denoted as a force and the one is denoted not as a force. They're
It
literally
behaves-
two opposites.
It behaves exactly like a force if you do the necessary limit for one formula to become the other. So the behavior itself is the same.
But that's a contradiction. You can't
Why?
have a... Okay, can something that's not a force act as a force?
Act as a... Yeah. There are a lot of things that can act as things that they are not. For example, if you start barking, you can act like a dog, but you're not a dog. Like I don't know.
But does that make it a dog, though?
No, but it is imitating a behavior of the dog, which is barking.
So let's put it this way. If gravity is not a force, how can it act as a force?
By restricting movement in a certain direction and adding acceleration on the particles, which is the same as a force does. The force...
Would you agree in
accelerates
physics? No, but would you agree in physics? You require an actual force to cause the change in direction.
As something behaving like a force, not necessarily a force.
You would require a force to change vector.
No, not really. We require something behaving as a force. A force is a subset of the things...
Wait. In physics, you require a force, not you require something acting as a force. It's either a force which... Okay, let's put it this way. What is force?
Force is a change in momentum in...
So F equals ma.
Momentum over change in time. That's the definition that Newton gave us.
Yes, F equals ma.
No,
so
it's
how
not the
can
same.
you... Yes, force
not the
equals
same
mass
as I
to
said.
accelerate.
It's
force
not the
causes
same.
mass to accelerate.
Those are two different things.
Newtonian second law of
Different laws.
motion. Newtonian's
No,
law of motions. Are you saying it's wrong?
No, the first law defines force and then equals it to mass times acceleration. The definition of force is momentum, the change in momentum over the change in time, which is not the same as mass times acceleration. You equal to it
I agree with
by
that.
making a
I agree with
simplification.
I can agree with that. So momentum requires a movement, correct?
Yeah, it's mass time velocity. That's the definition of
A
momentum.
movement of what?
Something, anything. Can be something physical.
Of mass.
Yeah.
Great. So F equals ma.
Mass times, that's the second law, but I'm telling you that the definition of force is change of momentum over change in time. That the two things are true.
There we go. So we require a movement of mass to happen, which requires
an acceleration.
But
Or
you agree you need a force for that to happen.
It mustn't necessarily cause acceleration because, for example, I can have something moving forward that is being stopped from moving forward due to friction, but there are two forces happening, even if they cancel each other. So I don't need necessarily acceleration, but the formula is right. Force equals mass times acceleration. Yeah, I do agree with that.
And gravity is not a force, so it can't act as changing momentum because in physics, you need an actual force for momentum to happen. No force, no momentum change.
Force just equals mass times acceleration. That means something accelerating or two things canceling each other. Gravity can do that even if it is not a force like electromagnetic force or the contact force. Gravity can change the acceleration of an object, even if it's not a force. Do you agree with that? If you consider
that goes against physics. That goes against Newton's laws of motion.
No, if it behaves like a force, if it changes the acceleration of something for a certain mass, it is behaving like a force, and gravity does that, even if it
So we can go back to earlier when we spoke about temperature. You claiming again temperature is a force.
What does one thing have to do with the other?
You just said if something can act as a force without being a force, it causes momentum to happen, therefore it can be considered a force. So temperature causes momentum. Does that mean temperature is now a force?
Temperature doesn't cause momentum. Temperature is kinetic energy, which is a form of momentum. Like it doesn't
so
cause.
It's not a force.
No, it is. It is momentum in this case. It is not a force. There's a difference between causing something and being the thing that is being caused.
Does temperature cause momentum
No,
of
no.
a gas? So it doesn't cause
is.
gas to move faster.
No, it is. It is. It doesn't cause it. It is. Temperature
Of course
is the
it
movement.
causes it. Temperature causes gas kinetic energy to increase, which causes the velocity to increase. That's what it causes momentum.
No, the definition of temperature is about kinetic energy. Do we agree with that?
Yes.
Well,
but I'm trying to explain to you how you are contradicting yourself, because you're telling us temperature cannot be a force, while literally telling us temperature is acting as a force, just like you're saying gravity is acting as a force.
No. You're getting it wrong. In this case, the temperature is the movement, not what causes the movement. Temperature is, not causes. Temperature is. You understand the distinction between causing something and being the thing that is caused?
No, the temperature isn't the movement. That's false.
It is defined as the median of the kinetic energy. It's the movement.
It's the result of it, dude. It's the result of the
result.
collision.
Yes, well, the kinetic energy is the result of the temperature induced. Temperature itself is not the energy.
The temperature of a system is defined as the kinetic energy of its particles. So it is the velocity. It is the movement. Temperature
it's not.
The velocity.
It's the cause.
Okay, do you disagree with my definition?
Let me place it this way. If you take a gas molecule and you heat it up, is it now going to have a faster velocity?
If I heat it up, yeah, it will have a faster velocity.
Okay. So how much velocity if I put 100 centigrade of temperature?
Yeah, well, I have to know specific characteristics of the molecule, the density.
My point is temperature isn't.
Now, for me to know the kinetic energy exactly, which is temperature defined as the kinetic energy, which are two different things, I do need the kinetic energy. But temperature is defined as kinetic energy multiplied by something. It is, even though I don't have one of those things.
So it is caused by temperature.
Like the kinetic energy is the temperature in this case.
No, it's caused by the temperature. The kinetic energy is the excitement of the gas is caused by the temperature. That's what the kinetic energy is.
Hold on 2 seconds. If you ask Google, is temperature movement? It says, yes, temperature is related to movement of molecules, but it's not the movement of the object itself.
Well, Google can tell you that communism is good, so I wouldn't take it as a reference. But
I'm just saying.
You can get any science textbook; it'll tell you the same thing.
Well, yeah, but that's what I'm disagreeing with you about what temperature is. Temperature is kinetic energy multiplied by something.
You live in a philosophy, not in an
but you're false equivocating. My point is you're false equivocating temperature as the kinetic energy. It isn't.
Well,
it's denoted by the temperature in its movement.
Well, the temperature
is the cause. The temperature is the cause of that kinetic energy. Just like what I'm trying to get back to the gravity is not a force, so it can't act as a force.
It's
a total contradiction.
Let's do a test so you can see my point. What's the difference between temperature and kinetic energy?
Kinetic energy is the movement based on the temperature given.
Yeah, but now define temperature.
Energy introduced.
You have made a circular definition. You defined energy. You defined energy with temperature and temperature with energy.
Temperature is just a unit given of energy introduced. Okay, the kinetic energy is the movement based on that energy introduced into the system.
It's not energy introduced. You're talking about heat, not temperature. Energy introduced is heat, not temperature. Those are two different things.
Yes, temperature is denoted by heat.
No, temperature and heat are.
It's a unit by heat. Temperature is literally denoted by heat.
No, heat is a form of work created by particles colliding with each other.
Thermo is what? Thermo in thermodynamics. What does thermo stand for?
I suppose temperature.
Yeah.
What is temperature? Heat.
No, it is not. How can you?
Yes, it is.
How can you say that temperature?
Thermo means heat.
This is something that you see literally in the first units of
heat dynamics. That's what thermodynamics is. It's temperature dynamics, heat dynamics.
But
You can go the
temperature
opposite way with it.
isn't
You can
heat.
go
This
cold,
is something that you see in the first pages of any thermodynamics textbook. It is not heat. Temperature and heat are two different things. For
There we go.
starters,
Even Professor Bell tells you temperature is the measurement of kinetic energy. It's a thing, not a measurement. That's what I'm telling you.
yeah,
Thank
but
you, Phil.
he's literally agreeing with what I said.
No, he's agreeing with what I'm saying.
What does that say? That temperature denotes kinetic energy, which is literally what I said.
Temperature is the measurement of the kinetic energy. You saying temperature is the kinetic energy. I'm telling you it's
Representing,
not.
let's say, representing a certain word in a different language, does that change the content that we're talking about? If I take a word, a concept, and I represent it in a different language, because you said that temperature is the measurement of the kinetic energy, right? Mm-hmm. So it is a way in which we express the kinetic energy. So in an analogous way, if I take a certain concept and I say it in two different languages, is the thing that I'm referring to different? The fundamental thing that I'm referring to, if I say it in Chinese or in Russian, is the thing different? No, and that's why I'm saying that temperature is the same as kinetic energy, because temperature is what denotes the kinetic energy in this case. It's like the word representing the thing. But the two things have the same content, even though they are two different representations of the same thing, which is the movement of the particles. Kinetic energy, movement. Temperature, movement. Even though temperature is a measurement of the kinetic energy, the two things are identical in this case.
Oh, God. Okay. So take a match, for instance, right? Strike your match. You put kinetic energy into the match, right? And it causes a temperature change, correct? The temperature is not the kinetic energy you put into it. Am I correct? The temperature is a reading of what is expended with the energy.
What's the kinetic energy that you put in? Let's see the process. What's the kinetic energy you put in? In which part do you put the kinetic energy? What specific aspect of it is?
So the actual motion, when you actually strike the match across it, the speed in which you do it actually causes the friction, which causes a temperature change.
And what happens?
It's not kinetic energy that you're measuring. You're measuring the end result of the kinetic energy. That's the temperature.
No, but what is happening when I am striking one surface with another? What's happening?
You're causing friction, sir. I just said that.
Now, we're generating a force, and that force, what's happening there? The force is generating movement, and that movement causes the particles to move. And that movement that is generated is the kinetic energy and the temperature, because temperature is a measurement of kinetic energy. It's as simple as that. There's nothing.
So the kinetic energy caused the temperature to change, or is it actually when you strike the match, the chemical reaction it has increases the temperature? It's not the temperature.
You have two parts. The friction itself is generating the movement, and the movement is the temperature and the kinetic energy. And then when the chemical reaction happens, you also have movement happening, which is the kinetic energy. You have two processes in which you have temperature equals the kinetic energy.
In the two processes, the kinetic energy is the cause of the temperature.
The temperature, again, I'm trying to say, the temperature is just the measurement of the kinetic energy. If you introduce the heat, it gives temperature, it gives the molecular movement, the kinetic energy. You understand that?
Yeah, heat
it's
is
just
different from
the temperature is describing a unit based on the kinetic energy.
The temperature is
what
just
is temperature? What is temperature?
Well, I just told you it's the kinetic energy.
But do you introduce temperature by introducing heat? Temperature is the unit measure of heat, correct?
No, heat and temperature are two different things. Heat is not a characteristic of an object. Heat is motion. Heat is when you change.
And what's kinetic movement?
Let's use the first law of thermodynamics. What's internal energy equal to? The change in internal energy. What is it equal to? The first law of thermodynamics. That's the simplest one.
Yeah, it's no energy can be created or destroyed, only transferred or transformed.
No, that's not the formulation.
That's the first law. That's the first law of thermodynamics.
The original formulation is that internal energy equals work exchanged and heat exchanged. You can use any textbook that you want to prove that. Like take any textbook that you want.
Yes, it's
And
talk
we'll do
about
that.
work done, but that's what the first law is.
No, not only work. Not
energy
only
can
work.
be created. No energy can create it or destroyed. It can only be transferred or transformed.
Which is that the
first law of
change in
thermodynamics.
which is that internal energy is equal to work done and heat. But
Yes,
work done
and
and
heat dissipation.
Work done and heat then is the change in the internal energy of something. So work and heat are change. Temperature is not change. Temperature is the movement of the
temperature is the measurement of the kinetic energy. You understand?
Yeah, that was literally what I said like 5 minutes ago.
That's what we're saying, but what we're saying is you saying it is temperature.
Yeah, a word that refers to a concept, I don't know, a Chinese word or a Russian word.
When you apply heat to a system, is that work done?
Heat can be considered a form of work, but by a rigorous definition, it is not. Because work is mechanical work usually, but heat would be work made by the difference in temperatures. Heat only happens when you have two different temperatures. That's
you
very
get
obvious.
heat in mechanical work too.
I think we're kind of over talking each other with, like, I don't know if it's a language barrier kind of thing, but we're kind of saying the same thing though. The only difference is we're trying to explain to you that you can't false equivocate gravity as not a force, but use it as a force.
Well, by the definition that we use, we can consider it to act as a force. Do you remember the definition that we used?
Philosophy, not a scientific proof.
You can't use it as a force because in physics, a force is what causes a mass to accelerate. And if you're claiming gravity is not a force, you can't have it moving a mass, because if you're claiming that, then you are literally going against the Newton's laws of motion.
Even if you don't believe in relativity, what does it claim about gravity?
Relativity claims that nothing really moves in actually it moves in a geodesic path, but only appears to move in a straight line because of space and time bending.
Okay, so from our perspective, it is changing the direction of things. And usually it makes orbits, for example, right? And those orbits are acceleration, are a form of acceleration. So gravity is causing a mass to accelerate.
No.
Going further, gravity to be like a force, not a force, but like a force. Yeah, I can even show you the deduction in which you get from relativity to Newtonian gravity. It is not that hard. It's taking a limit of a certain quantity.
The point is Newtonian gravity only works based on classical mechanics. General relativity doesn't work with classical mechanics because it works on the outer scale in space. You would agree?
Newtonian mechanics is a subset of relativity. It's like relativity contains Newtonian mechanics as a particular case. Like in the case of thermodynamics, you have the three different types of system, right? And it contains the three different types of system as a case, a particular case. The same thing happens with relativity. It contains mechanics, it contains Newtonian mechanics, particularly gravity, defined as Newton did, as a particular case, as a subset, as a part of it. It isn't the same, but it is contained in the concept of relativity. If you take a limit, the proof of that is that if you take a limit, you get the exact same relation between the masses, the radius, and the force. The exact same relation. How can that happen when the two concepts are not related?
Yeah, well,
if the two things were unrelated, you wouldn't get that relation, and you would be right. I would say, yeah, Flatzoid is right, but because we have that, I cannot say that you're right.
The thing is, what you guys love to do is you false equivocate the two. It's literally polar opposites, and you want to claim on selectiveness when what suits what. If it does this, it has to be a force. If it does this, then it's not a force. Gravity cannot be both. Gravity can only be one or the other. What you're saying is, you're saying general relativity on specifics can use it as a force based on Newtonian gravity, and gravity which is selective. You cannot be a male and female at the same time. It's literally hypocritical. It's the same.
Yeah.
You cannot be a force and not a force at the same time. You can't choose to use a force and not a force at the same time.
But
It's
a male
either
can
one or the other.
It would
A male
affect it
can
all
act as a
across the
female,
board
even if they
in
aren't.
both genres.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that in the case that you produce as an example, a male can act as a female even if they are not a female. In this case, we have a
They can act
not
as a
force
female.
acting as
Doesn't
a
make
force,
them a. Yeah, that's great. They can act as a female. Doesn't make them a female, does it?
which is what I said.
Great. So, can that acting female give birth to a baby?
Well, but that's something restrictive to females. In this case, we have a
Great.
subset.
So, what's restricted to a force?
The change in acceleration of a mass isn't just restrictive of a force. So I cannot think of a particular thing that would
Show me something that's not a force that causes a mass to accelerate.
We just talked about relativity.
That's a mathematical deduction. That's not an
Concept.
actual. Yes, it's a mathematical concept.
Everything
live
is
in maths.
Everything is a concept.
We don't live in maths.
Well, math defines how reality works.
No.
Yeah.
Math describes. It's a language. So
then
when
one-
I say, let me for instance take this thing. You would agree that we can mathematically explain why it falls.
Why? No, we can say that given the acceleration, it will be at a certain place. Yeah, but no, we
Okay,
cannot
so we
say
can
why it falls.
So you can't use math to explain why it falls.
Why? No, that's physical. The reason
Great.
why something
So you
happens.
can't use. So you can agree you can't use gravity to explain why it falls. Sorry, you broke up there.
Well,
But that's
gravity,
my point. So you
gravity
understand.
is not just math.
I just want to point out. You are saying that you can't use math to explain why it falls. You just explain that it does fall using math.
Because I need a cause. What I can do with math. What can I do with math? Tell me. In that case.
Describing. You're just describing.
If I know the acceleration of the object, right? I know the acceleration. Let's say that I ask you where it's going to be in 3 seconds. Can you tell me that using math?
Depends on the height, obviously.
No,
Because it has potential energy.
Let's say it has a constant acceleration. The object has a constant acceleration, and I tell you where is it going to be in 3 seconds? Can you tell me the answer to that question?
You can probably mathematically explain, yes.
No, you can deduct it.
Yes, you can.
say-
It's the same as when you take a rifle and you use your MOA. You will know, using a certain minute of angle, where the bullet's going to land, because it's got a trajectory. It's got
How
drop.
do I know that using something that only describes? How can I deduct things about reality using something that only describes?
Because it describes. It's a language. It's describing what happens. It's saying it's the same. Yes,
it's
you can
deducting.
use the math to say, if I let this go, it's going to drop at this speed. Great. Now I can say, well, guys, let's use it in another language. I'm going to say it in Afrikaans. Julle as ek hierdie laat val, sal hy val so vinnig val. I can say it in English. If I let this fall, it will fall at a certain speed. In the maths, I just explained it in Afrikaans and English. It is said exactly the same thing, just another language. Math is just a language. It's just used in physics to describe how the action works.
Can you use Afrikaans or English as a method to deduct when it's going to be in 6 seconds? If you can't, the comparison doesn't work.
I can say in Afrikaans, in an hour's time, the sun will set. Correct?
You can say it. That doesn't mean it will happen, but maths deduct it and it happens.
And maths, I can write a mathematical equation to say in an hour the sun will set. Correct?
You can write whatever you want. That doesn't mean it's math.
Well, math's telling me that. That's the whole point. Math is just a language. It's just a descriptive language. Now, math is used in physics to quantify and to explain a phenomena happening, correct?
Wait. If I use logic to say something that is wrong, and
You think he's having problems?
Yeah. There we go.
Okay, can you hear
Sorry.
me? To produce a statement that is wrong, is logic falsified?
So if you use logic to falsify, is logic falsified?
If I use logic and I present a wrong statement using logic, like, I don't know, cats don't exist, and I use not, which is a logical operator, does that mean that logic itself is wrong?
No, it just means your language used
Okay.
is wrong. Because your
Okay.
description goes against observation.
No, I said something wrong using logic. Do we agree on that? I said
No, it
something
wasn't
wrong and I used
logical at
logic.
all. It's a false equivalence. That wasn't logical because a logical statement would imply what is observed. We don't observe what you apply it, so it's not logical.
A logical statement mustn't be true. I can say cats don't exist. The logical statement exists, even though it is not true when it comes to reality. The same thing you can do with math. Doesn't mean that math is wrong, nor that logic is wrong.
And it also doesn't mean math is right, correct?
Yeah, you can create whatever you want.
So if you try and use maths like general relativity to explain the reason for this falling, it doesn't specifically mean that is the reason it falls.
Yeah, but I just told you, math is not necessarily just descriptions. As I presented the case before, if you know the acceleration of that object and I tell you when it is going to be in 6 seconds, you know where it's going to be. Something that you cannot do if math were to be only a descriptor.
I 100% agree, but that's what I'm saying. Math is describing what's happening. That's why math is used in physics, because it's describing what will happen at a certain...
Not deducting is not
explaining. It is. If you didn't use the math, you wouldn't know, because it wouldn't tell you what happens. But the point I'm trying to make is you can't claim. The point what I'm making is you can't claim general relativity, which is mathematical based, saying because the maths says this, it's real. It doesn't specifically mean this is how it is. I mean, I've made this argument before. I can mathematically tell you I have 2 cups in my hand now. Correct? Yeah. I can tell you that. But do I in reality have 2 cups in my hand?
What part of it is mathematics, apart from the fact that you're using numbers? That has nothing to do with mathematics.
Oh, yes. Numbers are maths. Is numbers not maths?
But logical operators are also logic. You can do the same example with logical operators.
Well,
then you
okay, let's do it this way.
Logic. It makes no sense.
Let's do it this way. You can't see my hands now, but I'm telling you guys, I have 2 cups in my hand. I have 1 cup and I plus another cup in my hand. Mathematically, that works. I have 2 cups in my hand, correct?
That's a statement. That's not math. I can create
that
any
is
statement
math.
I want.
1 plus 1 is math. Whether you accept it or not, that's math.
That's a number and a sum. Those are mathematical symbols. That doesn't mean it's math.
It's math.
Well, then any
just like
logical...
F equals MA, F equals MA is a math, correct?
Any logical symbol is logic. Do we agree with that? The symbol not, for example, when we are seeing logic. Well, then
F equals MA is math. Wait. F equals MA is math.
It's an equation. Yeah, I would say.
Which is math.
It's a part of math. It is not identical with the entire
like 1 plus 1 is a part of math. That's the whole point I'm making.
Symbols.
So you can use an equation. You can use an equation or a derivative or whatever you want. It's part of math. Does that specifically make it reality? No, it doesn't.
Can I ask one question?
It describes things, but it doesn't make it reality.
The description is wrong, not the mathematics. Do you realize that? Your description is wrong, not the mathematics.
Ask one question. What else can you use to say the outcome of how many you have in the hands? If you have in one hand 1 cup, and in second hand you have second cup. So what else you can use to say the outcome of that, if not math?
One part of your example, sorry.
Wow.
You
I
have
just
2 cups.
I just had to
You
do a
have
video
2
verification.
cups, 1 cup in one hand, and
sorry?
2 cups.
Yeah.
You have 1 cup in one hand and second cup in second hand. What else you can use to give the outcome of how many you have totally in both hands if you will not use math?
Yeah, but you're just talking about
No.
this.
Simple question. What else
Can
you
you
can use?
can you let me answer? Can you let me answer? Because there's a problem there in the deduction that you're trying to make with the question. You're using a description in this case, and then for the description, you are talking about numbers. That doesn't necessarily mean that you are doing mathematics. Do you think that just saying I have 2 cups does that mean that I'm doing mathematics of some kind?
I don't know how many cups I have asked you. What
Well,
else
that's
you can
nonsense.
use?
That's nonsense saying that that's mathematics, and the deduction that you're trying to make is nonsense. That's why I'm
No,
saying
it's
that the question is
pure
wrong.
sense. Because you cannot answer this question with your line of logic. Because it would lead, you would have to say it's mathematics.
No,
That's why
you're,
you avoid it. That's
the
very
thing
simple.
the thing you presented is a red herring and is wrong, just as I presented
Red herring.
right now.
Okay, mathematics is not herring. Okay, I take your point.
No,
Perfect.
I am using numbers, so I am doing mathematics. I am saying I have 2 cups, so I am doing mathematics. Do you think that?
How else would you deduce that you'd had 2 cups, or figure out how many cups there were in the first part if you didn't use mathematics?
I am just saying I have 2 cups. That doesn't mean I'm doing mathematics.
Look, my friend, it's really very basic. So if you can't get the basics, how we can get to the more complex things if we even disagree on the basics?
Well, I disagree because you're saying that using numbers to represent things is mathematics. But no, you're just using numbers.
Okay, it's mathematics. Okay, Grant, thank you for conceding. Thank you very much.
It's the actual definition of the word, dude.
No, that's hard to find.
Okay, but let's get to the point quickly because I've got to end the stream though. I just want to get to the point. I've got to end the screen, unfortunately. I really did enjoy this chat though, even though we do have major disagreements. The fact is, just because you want to, how can I say, claim general relativity, it doesn't make it reality. That's the whole reason why I asked, would you be able to point a scientific hypothesis and experiment showing gravity? Obviously, that's a whole different debate because there is no science for gravity and that can be proven. But would you like to debate that next time?
Well, I don't have much time because
next time because I got to end the screen now anyway.
Yeah. I'm very busy studying, but maybe I can hop on.
So whenever you're free to come, man, because I do stream practically every night, and I do appreciate you, and I think you're very respectful. So
as long as the disagreement is polite, I have no issue.
Yes, agreed. And I really do like you, man. So really do appreciate your respect.
At least he's respectful.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
So I do respect you.
He said I couldn't debate some of my points at the start because we wanted to talk about many different topics. I really wanted to talk about the pressure gradients because that's the thing.
We can catch on that again sometime if you want to. We can always do that again sometime. It's just it kind of got into.
Do we agree that that debate wasn't resolved? Because
yes, I agreed it wasn't resolved.
Okay.
I have other variables I want to throw into your gradient package too. You want to go with that? There's a lot more to a gradient than
leave it in the comments. Leave it in the comments of this
or write it down.
I'd rather do it live.
Yeah, but the problem the problem of doing things in live is that I have to improvise a lot because I don't have time to write and to think and to use a lot of different tools that I would rather prefer to use when I'm writing, for example. That's the problem with lives. And with live
I just want to find out. People are asking, do you have a YouTube channel or anything they can?
No, I have nothing. I just hop on in stream because I saw your stream.
Okay, but it's great having you on, man. So yeah, okay. I think
kudos to you because you were very patient with us, and not yapping like usually. So you are German. Kudos to you again, because that's really rare.
Appreciate you, man. Appreciate you guys coming in. Sorry, guys, I do have to end it here, unfortunately. I got to go, but I am alive again tomorrow night. So make sure to come again. It's really, really awesome. And yeah, dude, all the best. Many blessings. And appreciate everybody's support. Just hit the likes on the way out and make sure that everybody watches the stream. Cheers, guys.
Oh, also, Jesus
amen.
is King.
Amen.
Amen.